and there is going a brief change in the schedule. We are going to have a 5-minute talk from Carlos Gonzalez-Fernandez. Carlos, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes. So I think we are ready to listen to you.
Yeah. So just mostly a super brief update on what's the status of the data processing at the moment, because I think Phil has these slides, but then he has one thing less to worry about. So just 2 slides. So this is what Maren already mentioned. Vista has undergone essentially two interventions in the last year. So one was in late 2018, like I think it was July or so, or even later, when they actually cleaned, because we detected that there was quite a bit of degradation in the throughput of the system. So we let ISO know, and they decided to do a cleanup of the mirror and the windows. And this is what, so what you see down here is the historic values of the 0 points in all the 5 broadband filters. And this jump here in mid 2018 is the result of this cleaning operation. So it was pretty much brought up back to commissioning levels. And then this summer they stopped observing for about 2 months, also almost, between like about 6 weeks or so. And they did another maintenance, 2 maintenance operations. One was to the motors of that actually moved the telescope, and the other one was a re-illumination of the mirror. These 2 operations are already groundwork for foremost, and normal observation was resumed. I think the 5th of August or so, early August. So we don't have a lot of data yet to see what are the effects of the re-illumination on the throughput, but it seems that it's about, in K is about 23.05, which is pretty good. And also one of the probably the biggest task we had on our tray for this year was the reprocessing of all Vista data to put it up with version 1.5. As Maren said before, we upgraded our pipeline in 2016. So everything taken from January 2017 is already version 1.5. So it went straight to 1.5, so there is no problem with that. But we started going backwards through the archive and essentially recalibrating every single observation to make it consistent with 1.5. And this has been already finished, and data are on their merry way to Edinburgh. So also I want to just comment a little bit on another thing Maren said about data access. So you can also ask us for data. So there is another avenue, which is through CASU. This is only for images and our catalog. So if you want light curves and things like that, you probably should go through Edinburgh, through VSA. But you can actually request images from us too, if you need them. I mean, you need to be approved by the project PIs and all that, but otherwise it's available for you too. And the second big task we have undertaken this year was, this was an outstanding action from the last VVV meeting, where it was decided that having an alert engine for Vista, and particularly for VVV, was of interest. So we sort of like unveiled the first prototype a little bit more than a week ago. And so at the moment, what I do is every morning I get all the data from ISU. I do 2 batches, one at 6 a.m. This is all our European times, so 6 a.m. and noon. So try to get all the science, VVV science data taken in the K band for that night, do a quick reduction, examine all the detections and see which ones are worthy of raising an alert. And at the moment we have very simple criteria for an alert. So it has to have more than 20 epochs before the alert is raised. So the change in magnitude has to be greater than 0.3 in either positive or negative. Also, this has to be greater than 5 times the expected error for the magnitude, because you have saturated stars that have larger errors, and then when you go to the faint end, also errors can be, 0.1 magnitude. So you might have you impose both criteria, and also the difference in magnitude has to be beyond the 99% confidence interval for the light curve. So this is the typical alert you get, and every day there is I publish a summary of let's see if I can share this other just change the window. Yes. So every day there is a web page with all the alerts that get published, and then you can examine each one by one and decide which one are artifacts and not. So there is a small light curve, some photometric information like about the detection, all the available photometry in Vista and WISE, and some metrics like whether there are bright sources close by, how many detections, whether there might be an issue with crowding, and plots, and also some SIMBAT applets, so you can get for example you can get optical imaging, for example, for that, for the same alert. And this is at the moment this is distributed only to a handful of people. So if there is anyone that has interest on this and want to, is very much in beta testing at the moment, in the sense that there are a couple of hundreds alerts, of which 99, let's say 95% are just artifacts, 4% are variables. That is very frequent that you get things like this that are just variable sources that might have one point that is slightly off what we have observed before, but they are just regular variables. And it's mostly large period variables that I know there is one that should pop up fairly soon. So it's mostly, you have to go through many light curves. So it's a bit of a chore, but it will be interesting if there is people that are interested in doing this. And obviously, as we go along, this will be optimized, and the amount of false positives will decrease. But yeah, it will be nice to have a slightly larger pool of people to which to distribute these things. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Carlos. Anybody in the audience wants to say something to Carlos?
Just a quick comment saying that time domain is going to be covered tomorrow, and we'll have someone from NOAO. I hope to see him anytime soon, working exactly on that, and we could come back to that topic for tomorrow afternoon.
Okay.
I have one thing.
Yep.
Hello, Ricardo. What or how do you deal with the saturation during a particular time of the light curve? If the object in a certain moment it reaches saturation, is it considered in the light curve, or is it
at the moment it is.
Okay.
So at the moment everything goes into the pot. It is for things that, so it's tricky in the sense that it depends really. So for example, you could have a source that is always saturated and then drops, and you see it outside saturation, that will get picked up. And then things that, for example, will like, think of like a Myra star, for example, that it might spend half of the period saturated and the other half below saturation. So that will be trickier in the sense that it depends on actually depends on the amplitude and what fraction of the light curve is below saturation, for example. But it's pretty much a case-by-case thing at the moment.
Okay.
Because it depends very much on the kind of like the shape of the light curve and how the source behave. But yeah, all the sources are in at the moment.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Carlos.
Thank you.